跟你讲个笑话。香华先生哦，一生人最大的愿望是拍一张彩色照片。
When I was at university, I had 3 bands, and 2 were very serious, and one was a joke band really. And the joke band was with a bunch of Hong Kong people.
Okay.
And the serious band didn't get signed. The joke band got signed.
Can you define the joke band and serious band?
No, the joke band wasn't very good. But it got signed to Hong Kong because I was working with a young Hong Kong singer then. I didn't sing then. I wrote, I did everything but not sing. And so we made a demo and it got signed. So I was supposed to do a PhD then. So I took a break from the PhD. I didn't want to do it anymore. I went to make a record in Hong Kong. And that record became top 10.
What year was this?
Oh God, I can't remember now. Yeah, it became top 10, and I ended up spending like 2 or 3.5 years in Hong Kong. Actually, I didn't really like the scene there. I didn't really like the pop music scene I was doing. I didn't even like the music I was doing. So I sort of made a second record, and once the second record was released, it was doing quite well as well. I just decided to leave the scene. I didn't want to do it anymore. It's got a huge cult following in Hong Kong sort of student scene. It's called Mid-Century, 中叶. It's a very literary name. That's why it probably never went in. You know, didn't break very mainstream. But I decided I didn't want to do that sort of music anymore. So I sort of left the scene, and the intention was to go back and do my PhD. Okay. Except, of course, I have many friends in KL, and I had up until then have never been to KL.
Wow.
I'm Malaysian, but I'm Sabahan, right? So I've never been to KL.
From Sabah to elsewhere, but never
been to KL. So at that point, I decided, well, it's about time to visit the capital of my country, right? And since I had friends there, so I went to look up my friends, and so before I went back to the UK to do the PhD, I stopped by KL, and then I just stayed until now. I just didn't leave. Film was when after a few years here, I didn't do any music for a few years. I needed the money, so I found myself a job. And then I started writing again and performing again. And a couple of years after I started writing and performing, I made a record. And in those days, I performed a lot in a place called No Black Tie. The first No Black Tie, not this new one. It's an earlier location, which is a lot edgier. And that period of time, there was No Black Tie was really the center of a lot of the independent artists in KL, from film to music to painting to dancers and so on. So I got to know a lot of filmmakers. Including, you know, almost every single person I've ever worked with. I mean, ever since. You know, people like Dane Syed, who became a very, very good friend of mine. Ho Yu Hang, Tan Chun James Lee, and of course Yasmin. Although Yasmin and I didn't meet like that. I mean, it was after my record was released. I used to keep a blog, and one day I had a message, sort of comment on my blog by a person called Yasmin Ahmad, and I had no idea who she was. She was quite famous in the advert scene, but she hadn't made Sepet yet. She was made Rabun already. And she said, I'm such a big fan of your music, because I bought your record, and I've just made a film, I would love for you to see it. And so I went to her office, and that was Sepet. And so we became friends like that. And that's partly how I got into film, because of all the filmmakers I got to know in that period, when I was at No Black Tie. Firstly, as an actor, strange enough.
Ah, okay.
Because of that generation of artists who were hanging around that place, I was the first one to break, because I had the first hit. And they're all young filmmakers who were struggling and poor and angry. And they thought, well, and Pete broke first, so maybe we cast Pete, people will see our films. They were very mistaken, of course. And nobody watched their films either. But anyway, I got into acting because of that. First film was a little film by Tan Chui Mui. It's a short, it's 25 minutes short. She sort of bounced up to me on the street, actually. She said, oh my God, are you Pete Teo? I said, yeah.
You must be famous.
Well, I just had a #1 hit. So, and she said, I'm a fan, and I've just written this little short film, and I really want you to be in it. I said, I don't act. I've never acted in my life. So anyway, I wasn't intending to do it. But she was very, very forceful, and she gave me her reel and gave me everything, the script and everything. So I went home and I sort of gonna chuck it in the bin. Then I put the CD on. I thought, let's not be so cruel. Let's put the DVD on, and I saw some rough footage that she shot of her other work. And it was quite amazing because she was only shooting like still life, just buildings and trees, and there was something about it which I liked, how her eyes worked. And then I started looking at the script, and I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll do this. It's
Was
quite.
it a big part?
It's the lead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the lead. So, so I sort of did that, and that became really successful because that then went to the festivals and won a lot of awards. And that, coincidentally, I didn't know until later, was funded by Yasmin.
Ah.
I didn't even know Yasmin then.
最近我听见你的风流史哦，
哪里有啦？你不要天天乱讲。我是给他陷害的，整天讲我拈花惹草，害得我追不到女孩子，
不管来了行人咩？
一朵花都没有。
So anyway, that's how I became an actor. And after that, because I did so well, a lot of directors then asked me to act. Which I found quite strange because I never thought of myself as an actor. Yeah, very, very strange. That's how I got into film. And then of course, Yasmin asked me to write for her, write music for her, and that's how I got into the music side of things.
The Pergi song, is it?
Gubra was the first one. The Untitled song in Gubra was mine.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. She asked me to write. Well, at first she saw Sharpened. She got me to see Sharpened and asked me what I thought. I actually didn't like it at first. I looked at it and I said, I don't like it. Why? Well, it's too sweet for me because if you know my music is very dark. And I said it's very sweet and I don't do sweet. But I told her, but I think you've just made the most important film for 30 years for our country. And although personally I don't connect with it because I'm no longer 18. But I really, really like what you're doing. And I think you're very courageous to deal with that topic at that time. So that's how our friendship started. And she said, well, I'm so glad you like it, like what I do. And I'll love for you to write music for me. So when she made Gubra, I think a year later, she wanted an Untitled song. And I asked her what was the film about. And she said, well, it's about God. It's about religion, it's God, it's about Islam. And I said, is it about Islam or is it about God? And she said, well it's not much difference, it's about God. I said, good, then I'll write you a hymn. So I wrote her a hymn for a film about Islam. I said, well, there's no difference, I agree with you, there's no difference. And so, because when I grew up, I was a Christian child. I'm not a practicing Christian, but my mom is a very devout Christian. So a lot of my early musical experience were in churches. singing hymns. So I know hymns very well. So I could knock off a hymn like in 5 minutes. So I wrote a hymn for her, which was already on my record, which later became on my record. It's called Who For You, and that became the entitled song to Cobra. And then, and a few years later, we became friends, and we've collaborated many times after that. I mean, she of course helped me direct here in my home. She was part of 15 Malaysia and so on. And one night she sort of texted me and she said, I had just released a single in Korea called I Go. And it wasn't released in Malaysia at all. I didn't even tell anybody in Malaysia that I've done this thing, because my career management who asked me to do this thing that's for a song that's exclusively released in Korea. And I got a text from Yasmin, and Yasmin said, "Bastard, you released a new song, you didn't tell me." I found it on the internet. I love it. Can I use it for my new film? I say, I'll just take it. You don't even have to ask, right? And then she a day later, called me up and said, I got a better idea. Why don't you just write the music for the whole film? And that, of course, became Talent Time. All the music for Talent Time, which was the other songs are exclusively written for the film, but I Go, which was Perky, wasn't. I mean, originally it was intended for actually Korea.
Right.
Yeah. Script writing was with Dane Syed, actually. The first time I did it was with Dane Syed. In that period of my life, when I was at No Black Tie, I actually had more filmmaker friends than musician friends. I found that I could get along with filmmakers very well. And Dane was my best friend. I mean, we used to hang around all the time. And there was a big rumor that we were gay because we were inseparable. And he, of course, was also trying to make. He was already very famous, very renowned as an advertising director, but he was also trying to make a feature film. So we decided to write together. So we wrote a script together. That's the first time I worked in scripts.
Did it turn into a film?
No, unfortunately, it went as far as Hollywood, actually. But it was a film about pedophilia, so nobody wanted to act in it. I mean, I fell in love with Malaysia very late because, of course, a lot of my upbringing wasn't in Malaysia. I mean, insofar as parts of it was in Borneo, in Sabah. And Sabah is very different from Malaya, So it wasn't exactly Malaysia as well. It was Borneo more than.
Yeah.
Then I went away to Singapore, went to the UK, and I came back. And I really sort of fell in love with Malaysia after I came back. After a few years, and you begin to see the possibilities of this country. And that when we get it right, it was really beautiful when we get it right, And Yasmin had a lot to do with that. I mean, we talk about that a lot. And, her vision of what our country ought to be. And once you had some sort of notoriety, you have a platform, and of course people, especially young people, look up to you. And I've always felt that when you have a platform like that, you could use it for many purposes. And one of the best purposes to use it, of course, is to build a country. And I've always been very politically inclined in my mindset. In fact, I used to consider making music videos in my business, and I used to see music videos on MTV, and I used to get depressed because it's like all this effort and all this talent just going to do that. It seems very vacant. So to be able to do that and put a cause, a meaning behind it was what kept me going. Or else I would have given it up a long time ago, because I don't think I could deal with the frivolousness of just doing pop music without something behind it, without a reason for the work to exist. And a lot of that sort of reform politics videos became for me a way to continue to work because it had meaning for me, rather than just trying to sell more records or trying to look sexy on screen. You know, that's so dull, you know. And so it became for me a sort of a good reason to use this craft that I have or certain talent that you have. You put it to good use. And of course I had a good friend in Yasmin who does the same thing. Yeah, in a way. So we sort of egg each other's on. We sort of encourage each other to do stuff like that. Well, there's still a long way to go, of course, because we changed the government. We didn't change the country. I mean, you know, the government and the country are two different things. So, but it does give us hope. It does give us a place to start thinking seriously or to reset perhaps many places or many directions we've gone wrong. Insofar as my personal part in it, I don't think it's that much. I think I did a lot of things that are seen and that were very loud because a lot of people see them. But this change couldn't have come about without other people, without the people themselves, without politicians and other people in civil society doing work. And it really is a group thing. I mean, I do a lot of the visible stuff, but that doesn't really mean it's most important or more important. And I'm always very, very clear to say that, because it's very easy for kids to, for example, when we start doing stuff like here in my home or 15 Malaysia, a lot of kids wanted, you know, to be in the project, and they'll write to me and say, "Hi Pete, you know, next time you do something, I want to be in it." And so, you know, the reality of that sort of production is that it's so fast and so rushed that you don't really have time to think a lot, and really whoever is next to you, you grab and you do things. So it's impossible for me to think about you without any disrespect, because the pressure is very, very, very high. But why don't you do your own thing then? Why do you not be in my thing?
Yeah.
Why don't you do I'll help you do your own thing. And I think it's very important for other people to do it too, so that it's not just one or two people doing it. I think it's very important for the whole community to do it. And I think that's what happened in the following years, that you began to see many people doing stuff just independently, doing by themselves. And I think that resulted in this chance we have to reset. And I think at the same time, I always believe that one mustn't place too much emphasis or importance on politicians. I think it's more important that people understand that we are the bosses, if you like, collectively. Because I think hero worshipping is very dangerous. I don't think we should do it. I think people ought to understand that this is our country, and collectively we have the vote, and fortunately we're a democracy, so we can do that. And if you keep the pressure on, over time we always get the country we deserve, you know. So if you keep the pressure on, things will change. But you know, you can't erase or change 60 years of bad habits overnight. So at the same time, we also must have some patience. The people, I mean, I remember going once to, this was later, at Bersi. And there was a moment at Bersi that I'll always remember, which was there was a group of our Muslim brothers and sisters praying. I mean, just on the road, you know. And then there were Chinese and Indian people sitting around, and when there was time to pray, and everybody just automatically respected it, and just bowed, and almost by instinct, and just, you know, that's beautiful. You don't get that in many places. That there's this due consideration and respect for other people's beliefs and culture. And if we get it right, this is a very special place. I've traveled a lot in the world, you know, and you don't see this actually much. This level of just spontaneous respect. When we get it wrong, we get it spectacularly wrong. I mean, but when you get it right, it's gorgeous, and really that's the sort of thing you want to build, you know, and that's the sort of culture, mass culture you want to build, and that's really the beauty that Malaysia could be. We don't see enough of it. We see it in tourist adverts, you know, Malaysia truly Asia, but that's advertising, right? So it's not always true. One wish that one could see it more in real life, and I think to a certain extent we did. And I grew up in Sabah, I saw loads of it, because obviously in Sabah it's different. In Borneo it's different. There was never this sort of hard racial religious line. I mean, when I grew up, nobody cared what religion you are. Who cares? That's your business, not mine. Right? You can eat together, you can play together. And when I first came to Malaya, now call it, Kuala Lumpur, it took 2 years for me to settle down, because that racial line was so clear. That religious line was so hard. And you can see that tension in the air. But there are moments you see it disappears and it's beautiful. And Yasmin and I used to talk about that. And she of course grew up in Ipoh, where it's different again. So I think it's the sort of vision of Malaysia that we shared that was really the basis of our friendship, because a lot of our sense of aesthetics are very different. As artists, we make very different sort of work. But we had a very common vision of what our country ought to be and how we should be respecting other human beings. I want to basically make long films. I could have done that maybe about 10 years ago, but I didn't feel that I was ready. I'm not one of those people who think I can wheel a camera, therefore I make long film. So a lot of the answer to the earlier question you asked me, which was the sort of political reform videos, was also in part because of that. I made those things because I had by then fallen in love with filmmaking as much as I had with music. But I didn't think that you could fall in love and just make feature films. Making feature films is a totally different thing. It's a long time to try and capture the audience attention. And a lot of this making shorter forms of videos or shorter films became the way I learned. It was good practice. And because then I started acting in a lot of movies, that gave me an understanding to how in front of camera works as well as behind the camera. So overall, I think you sort of get educated, learn first. And until a couple of years ago, I didn't feel that I was ready to do a feature film. So in the future, yeah, I mean, I think the next thing I want to do is make a feature film and perhaps more feature films.